Hey guys, it's Matthew. Welcome to Win Life. Today we're going to talk about the 2 keys that you need to have success and win in life. It really comes down to just 2 keys that you need. So let's walk down this dark pathway and talk about it. So there are really only 2 keys that you need to win in life in whatever you're trying to do. Whatever you think winning might be, there are really only 2 keys that you need to get there. And they might be surprising to you. They might not be what you thought, but there are really only 2 keys that I found after about 10 years of searching. So let's get into it. So first we need to understand what winning is. So this channel is all about winning in life, and we want to understand what winning looks like. So, what is winning? We have to define it. Is it money? Is it getting a bunch of Lambos, a bunch of Ferraris, parking them in your driveway, trying to have a good time, trying to, show off your icons and your status symbols? I don't think so. You'll wind up taking those cars to the mechanic or having your handyman take them to the mechanic, and you'll get a bill for about $40,000 for a simple oil change on your Lambo. Money can buy you other things, right? It can buy you yachts. It can buy you cruise tickets. I've done a couple of cruises. Cruises are fun, right? I was on one that took me all the way down to the Caribbean and had some fun there. But I remember the last day of that cruise, looking out over the Mississippi River in New Orleans, because that's actually where they start you from, and just thinking that cruise trips are great, but if this is all there is for what money can buy, then it's not that much. You just wind up with a nice set of scenery for 7 days, and then your trip is over. So what else can money buy you? Toys can buy you, nice houses, anything else you can imagine. So winning is probably not just stacking cash. We can X that one off of the list. So is winning fame? Let's think about fame for a bit. So who are some really famous people, and are they winning in life, and are they winning because of their fame? Well, we can think of the Kardashians, who kind of rose up from obscurity and are now worth billions. They are very famous, so they pass the fame test. But are they successful because they're famous? Probably not. I think the fame gets in the way. They're trying to fill up their car at a gas station, and they've got 50 paparazzi trying to distract them, bother them. And part of that is their life. That's how they get paid. But it really probably messes up their lives. So fame probably is not healthy in the long run. So we can probably X that one off of the list as well. That probably doesn't get you to a winning life, by itself at least, as we climb this rock. So we've X'd off money and fame. What about popularity? You could be really popular in high school, right? Is that winning in life? Is that all there is to life? Maybe if you're a jock or somebody who really cares about that stuff, that might seem like all there is to life. For a time at least. Let's check out the view. up on top of this rock here. Got a quality view. Just take that view in as you ponder what winning in life may or may not be. So, I think we can X off money, we can X off fame, we can even X off popularity. So you say, wait, what does that leave you with if we've just eliminated a lot of the things that people think get you to win in life? What do you have left? Well, that does eliminate a lot, right? That takes away a lot of what people have been preconditioned to think winning in life is. So winning is not money, winning is not fame, winning is not necessarily popularity. What could it be, right? Is it your 401k? Is it your retirement plan? Does that sort of get you an automatic win in life? Probably not, right? The average lifespan for retirees, once they retire, take a guess, put it in the comments below. What is the average lifespan for retirees once they retire? You probably won't believe this, but it's about 1.5 years. So that means after about 500 days of retirement, the average retiree actually passes away. Probably on their sofa, watching spring training, watching sports, watching politics, or just in their bed, because they've been conditioned to working hard. They have worked super hard to get their 401k good to go, and now they're kind of sitting back and their body actually shuts down after about 500 days, year and a half. They're actually on average destined to pass away. So is your 401k winning in life? If you get to enjoy it for a year and a half, or if you're in poor health, maybe not enjoy it at all, right? There's a lot of older people, if you've ever been on a cruise, who can't really walk around. They're kind of just trapped at their tables, and they're trying to enjoy what they've spent 60, 70 years working on, but they just can't really enjoy it because their bodies are already sort of giving out. Okay, so let's travel down this rock. Let's try not to fall here. I think we can check off and X off all 4 of those commonly sort of recognized symbols of winning. So we've got money, fame, popularity, 401k, retirement. We can sort of preclude all 4 of those really highly recognized symbols that we thought were indications of winning in life. We can actually preclude them from true winning, because we've just gone through, sort of exposing that each one of those things, each one of those 4 really craved after things in life, well, they don't really get you to where they thought they got you, and even if they do, they end up really distracting you, taking away a lot of your time and energy, and like the 401k, probably kicking in far too late. So money, fame, popularity, 401k, retirement, security, all that stuff, we can actually eliminate all 4 of those key status symbols in our pursuit for what winning in life truly is. Interesting, right? So you might be surprised already about where we're going. Here's the fifth one that I want to throw in. Some people think having real estate is winning. So is real estate an automatic sort of check for winning? Does real estate, automatically get you to a winning life? I don't think so. I have a friend who is about 60, 65, and he has a bunch of houses. He has like 40 houses. He's racking up the cash flow, but he is a handyman. Essentially, at the end of the day, he has to go around, check on all the properties, fix toilets, do, pretty menial stuff sometimes to keep the cash flow going. And that's not always the easiest job, even though, he might be getting 10K, 15K a month cash flow profit. He still has to go around, attend to these houses, deal with angry tenants, deal with people who don't have a lot to live for, people who, just had money to pay rent, maybe will never own a home. So real estate is not necessarily a lock on winning in life either. So what is winning? I've just approached a bunch of status symbols that, we're trained are big icons of winning. I've just knocked them down. So I've knocked down five keys that you thought would get you to a winning life. And I've just kind of knocked them all down. So where does that leave us? Got a nice cave here. Nice waterfall going on. Where does that leave us? We've just eliminated money. We've just eliminated fame. We've just eliminated popularity. We've just eliminated your 401k, your retirement, your supposed security in life. And we've just eliminated real estate, or sort of this magical passive income that winds up being not so passive and kind of a headache. So what on earth is winning? I keep asking that because you guys probably don't have a straight answer at this point. You probably were gunning for one of these five, or a sixth or seventh that you now realize is similar to one of these five. Here's the deal. Winning in life, and the definition of winning, has already been answered. It's already been defined. It's just a matter of looking in the right place. And to date, I have not seen a video anywhere on the internet that is going to walk through what we walked through today, that is going to incorporate the words of the wisest man on earth, who not too many people talk about. A lot of people have talked about this man. He lived about 3,000 years ago. There was another man who lived about 2,000 years ago who was a god/man, and so he probably takes the cake in terms of wisest human to ever live. But I'm talking about wisest straight up man, no god man, just man. This guy had his wisdom from God, and he was the wisest person that any of us can ever take wisdom from. Again, you're not going to hear anything like this video. You're not going to hear anything like this on YouTube. I've never seen it. I've been on YouTube since 2010, surfing around. I will always, when I'm looking for wisdom or motivational words or how to win in life, I will often try to search for Graham Stephan, for real estate. He's got some great videos. If I'm curious about science, I'll search for Neil deGrasse Tyson and see what he's got going on. But as far as wisdom, you're not going to get any better wisdom, not even close, than what I will share with you today from the wisest man to ever live. Some of you might know his name. You can comment below. Tell me his name, tell me his approximate life timeline. It's in the BC era. But let's get into it. So again, like I was saying, a lot of people will search in the wrong places for wisdom. A lot of folks will try to search for the people they think know the most about life. And that's okay. There are a lot of people who are pretty knowledgeable, who know a decent amount. Bill Nye, the science guy, he's great for science. And so I've listened to his podcast at work. At my place of work, I've listened to him a lot. And he brings on experts. So he's got biologists, he's got astrophysicists, all of the folks who, claim to be experts in their fields and are experts in the sense that they've spent a lot more time than the average person has studying where we came from, studying the exact amount of exoplanets that we have identified, studying the exact amount of habitable exoplanets that are actually very few in number. And what I did find, however, with Bill Nye, with all of those experts, is they just run out of answers. So at some point during the podcast, at some point during the lectures that they have, they run out of ideas on where we came from. They run out of inspiration on the origin of humanity. It always happens, no matter which expert is brought on. There's always a point in the podcast where they say, well, we just don't know, the answer to that question. Like with dark matter, for example. Some of you guys probably are familiar with dark matter, dark energy. It takes up about 85% of the known universe. And we just don't really know what it is. So you can throw out a lot of your confidence that you had in, modern science, modern experts, the people you thought had all the wisdom about life, where we came from, and how to win in life, because we just don't really know, right? Our science is limited. So a lot of people are searching in the wrong places. They're trying to ask Bill Nye. Bill Nye doesn't know. Trying to ask Neil deGrasse. Neil deGrasse, he's very smart, very intellectual. Maybe knows, 5 times what the average person knows. And the average person, is maybe 0.0001% of the way to understanding where we came from. So he's maybe up at 0.0005%. Again, nowhere close to knowing where we came from, and therefore being able to inform us on how to live life. So what I'm getting at is there's really very few people that can instruct us, that can have the appropriate level of wisdom to be able to tell us, hey, this is how you should live life. This is winning in life. Because what happens is people, gain some knowledge, but their average lifespan is so minuscule compared to the lifespan of the universe. And so by the time they've gained some decent knowledge, they're already sort of on their way out. And the cycle just continues over and over. So, you probably have searched in the wrong places, and that's okay. That's probably why you're here at this video, curious about this person I'm going to talk about who truly has wisdom far beyond all of these other folks. So, you might have searched also for advice from presidents. Possibly not the current one, right? The current one is, well, he just doesn't really know how to talk. We'll just leave it at that. Previous one, very eloquent, very composed. A lot of folks might have tried to find wisdom there. Or from other presidents or other leaders in politics. And that's good. There is some wisdom to be found there. Those folks all operated under a lot of stress. They all found a way to make things happen. But still, the wisdom is very limited, even with presidents, even with people at the very top. You think there's like a spiritual top of humanity. Once you start listening to those folks, you realize they're just operating under higher stress. They've got more responsibility, and when they go home at the end of the day, well, they don't really know either. You may have searched on Reddit. I've done that for sure. You may have tried to find the meaning of life on Reddit, but you end up realizing after maybe 500 threads, a bunch of subreddits, that all of those folks are just normal folks who at the end of the day are bored and just trying to socialize. They have a lot of good experience, but would you really want them to tell you the meaning of life and tell you, what they think is important in life? Maybe, but you also don't really know them, and probably not the best source. So, that's about 20 minutes of giving you some background, laying down the framework for what I will be sharing with you now from the wisest man on earth. And again, like I said, this I have never seen on YouTube. I've never actually seen it from anybody. This stuff you can take to the bank. This stuff truly is valid, and it's from the wisest source on earth. So without further ado, let's get into it. So, who is this man? Who is this person that I'm talking about? He's the wisest man to ever live. Who is he? His name was Solomon. So let me give you some backstory on Solomon. Let me kind of set up the stage and demonstrate the context for why Solomon was the wisest man to ever live. Why you should probably take some time to study him, and why his words and what he says should have a lot more weight than anybody that lives currently, no matter their status, no matter if they're Jeff Bezos, who is really not the best of people, no matter if they're Bill Gates, who is more of a stand-up guy. No matter if they're Elon Musk, whose family life is in tatters and works about 100 hours a week, has very little balance in life. You know, I keep chipping away at these people that we thought were clearly winning in life to demonstrate that, well, they actually aren't as balanced as we thought, they aren't as winning as we thought. So Solomon, let's give you some context on Solomon. Let's demonstrate why his words should be heeded, should be listened to, and should be really studied above and beyond anybody else's words that ever lived in this world. So Solomon lived around the 1000 BC era. I think it was 900 or 1000 BC. That was before the coming of Christ, who came and was born around 0 BC or 0 AD. I think they've changed the names of the eras recently to try to be more politically correct. BC AD represented before Christ and after death. So after the death of Christ, when he died at the age of 33. So Solomon lived around 1000 BC. He was the son of David, who was also a king of Israel. Solomon himself was a king of Israel who reigned in Jerusalem. And Israel, to give you some context, if you have ever read the Bible, if you've ever spent time studying, Israel was the chosen nation by God to be set apart and sort of separated and chosen for God's purposes and chosen to be representatives of God's work on the earth, chosen to be different from the neighboring tribes, the neighboring peoples, the Hittites, the Philistines, all of those other folks. Israel was to be separate and set apart from them. So God chose Israel a long time ago. It goes all the way back to like 2000, 3000 BC is where the Bible starts picking it up. And God chooses certain people and he communicates with them. They end up having bigger families. The families wind up creating Israel and that nation, which finally got established in 1948. But Solomon, he was the son of David, and David has a really great backstory as well. So you guys really should take your time to study David, study Solomon, so that you can, verify what I'm saying here, so that you can verify the really strong background, really strong narrative, storyline that comes with Solomon, so that his words mean even more than they thought you would, that you thought they would, Okay, so David was the youngest of a bunch of brothers. I think he had 11 brothers. David was just a shepherd boy. So the crux of the story starts with David as a young boy, as a shepherd in his countryside home. He's just a young shepherd boy, and the Israelites have a problem. So the Philistines are on the verge of attacking and taking over Israel. They've got giants, and this is backed up archaeologically. So they found the bones of giants that were about 9-10 feet tall. They've already found the bones to these giants. These giants were the Philistines, and the lead giant soldier who was banging on the doorstep of Israel. You probably know his name. I certainly do. His name was Goliath. So Goliath is taunting the Israelites. He is taunting their God. He's saying, come at me. You know, you guys are scared. You guys are going to get wrecked by us. And he's sort of doing a demonstration near the Israelite camp out in the open battlegrounds that they've set up. And the Israelites are scared at this point. They don't know what to do. Nobody really wants to take on Goliath. He's about 9 feet tall, and I think they had like 6 fingers as well. Super huge guys. Again, you can check into all this stuff. They've already found the fossils to these giants. And so Goliath is taunting the Israelites, but he's taunting their God, and that's where God gets upset. So God really doesn't like being taunted or dishonored in that way. And so he tells the current king to start rounding up people, start finding people who are going to take on Goliath. And so David, the shepherd boy, all of his brothers are with him, and a soldier comes by to pick up somebody who can challenge Goliath. You know, someone who's courageous enough. And David probably is thinking, it's not going to be me. I'm the youngest brother, just a ruddy boy, as it says in the Bible. But after some personality testing, after some checking, they actually end up selecting David, the youngest. So David takes his sling, and as you probably know from the story, David challenges Goliath, who's probably about 3 times his height. David's maybe 12 years old. Goliath is about 9 feet tall. David gets onto the battlefield, and after finding 3 smooth stones, gets his sling ready and launches his stone. And first hit, he launches it. It hits Goliath, and it knocks him to the ground, and he's out for the count, at least unconscious. And the Israelites run over. They actually make sure that he's out, not to be too graphic. And after Goliath's death, the Philistines pretty much take cover, and David, the young shepherd boy, defeats Goliath, the 9 foot tall, opponent. So pretty huge story. Why are we getting into the life of David and Goliath? Well, that sets up the background for Solomon, the wisest man to ever live, the person that you probably haven't heard much of, that you probably should be studying a lot more than you ever have. That sets up the backstage for Solomon. So David, he ends up defeating Goliath, then becoming an army commander under the current King Saul. And this King Saul ends up hating David. He's super envious, super jealous of David's popularity. And David ends up defeating tens of thousands of enemies of the Israelites. And a lot of people start taunting Saul, the current king, telling him, you have slain your thousands, but David has slain his 10,000s. And so the current King Saul, he gets angry, right? He gets quite upset, quite envious of David, who has the bigger following now. And so Saul turns on David and starts trying to take him out. So David is all of a sudden on the run now from Saul, from his own people who are trying to take him out. So Saul is trying to take him out. There are many scenes in the Bible where Saul is close to killing David, but David is on the run. And at one point, Saul's troops get very close to finding David, but David hides in a cave. And while he's in the cave, Saul, just Saul the king, goes into the cave to relieve himself. And David is so close to Saul that he was able to tear off a piece of his garment. But he decided not to kill Saul. And if he had killed Saul in the cave, maybe he walks out and everybody just anoints him as king instead. But he backs off, he decides to let Saul go. But Saul finds out that he was so close he was able to take a piece of his garment from the cave. So Saul probably should have been grateful at that point. But no, Saul keeps trying to hunt him down, keeps trying to, kill him, even though pretty much all that David has done so far has been good in the sight of people and in the sight of God. There was another story where David's troops were very thirsty, and David decides to risk everything and walk into Saul's camp and get a glass of water. So he runs into Saul's camp, he finds their well, he fills up a cup of water, and then he brings it back to his troops, and he actually ends up pouring it out on the ground as an offering to God instead. So far David has done pretty much nothing but good. He has a huge following. Again, I don't know how much you know about David, but these people, David and Solomon, you really want to spend some time studying, because they are some of the most well-known folks to have ever lived. And when you think of our current celebrities, Neil deGrasse, Bill Nye, even presidents, those sorts of folks pale in comparison. These are people who lived about 3,000 years ago and are still being talked about and have hundreds and hundreds of lines of ancient texts written about them that demonstrate who they were and their importance to the entire framework of humanity. So spend some time really studying David and Solomon. These are people who transcend not only decades, not only centuries, but millennia. These are folks who matter a lot more than the Kardashians, a lot more than Tom Cruise, a lot more than current actors, and the folks that we think transcended everything, but in reality don't have answers to our questions. So that's David. That's some backstory on David. Now, David did make some mistakes. So David becomes king, which makes sense, right? His popularity was through the roof. And he also was a righteous man and someone who started from the bottom, started as a shepherd boy. He becomes king and he makes some mistakes. So he sees a lady named Bathsheba, just sort of a random lady who is out sunbathing and out bathing actually in her pool. And David is up in his kingly estate. Bathsheba is bathing and he sees her and he's really bored. He's not on the battlefield where the rest of his people are. He's back home, so he's isolated and bored. He sees Bathsheba and he says, "Hey, centurion, go grab Bathsheba. I want to get to know her." And so they grab Bathsheba. She has no real choice in the matter. And she's brought up to the palace, and David starts getting to know her. And she does have a husband. And so her husband's name was Uriah. And I think he was Uriah the Hittite, one of the tribes of Israel. And so David, not only does he cheat with Bathsheba, but he also starts plotting to eliminate Uriah, her husband. And so he ends up putting Uriah on the front lines. Uriah ends up dying on the front lines as a result. And David has a child with Bathsheba, but that first child is cursed by God, ends up dying. And then he has more children. And one of those children is Solomon. So Solomon, the wisest man to ever walk the earth, he is born. Let's get into it. So here's some straight up ancient text on Solomon. This is the first important passage where we learn about Solomon, the wisest man to ever live. This is 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5. It says, "At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, 'Ask for whatever you want me to give you.'" So, open invite from God, whatever you want me to give you. Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart." So I should mention David repented of his mistakes and ended up being one of God's favorite kings because he made mistakes, but he repented and reigned very well after his mistakes. It goes on, "You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day." So Solomon's about to be the anointed king. "Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people. You have chosen a great people, too numerous to count or number." So Israel's getting pretty big at this point. "So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" So what's Solomon asking for? He's asking for a discerning heart. What does that mean? Well, we'll see. The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, "Since you have asked for this and not for long life," right? 401k, retirement, or wealth, right? Lambos, Ferraris, Rolexes, "nor have asked for the death of your enemies," eliminating competition, "but for discernment in administering justice, I will give what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be." So this is why we're talking about Solomon, guys. God himself is saying there will never be someone like Solomon in terms of discernment and wisdom ever in the history of humanity. You can go all the way back, you can go forward. You won't find anybody like Solomon in the history of humanity. God himself is saying this. This is why we're talking about this guy. There will be no equal among kings. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both riches and honor. If you walk in my ways and obey my statutes and commands as David your father did, I will give you a long life. Then Solomon awoke, and he realized it had been a dream. He returned to Jerusalem, stood before the ark of the Lord's covenant, and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then he gave a feast for all his court. So that is the inception of Solomon's wisdom. Instead of asking for riches or for a long life, two, huge desires that people have, he instead asked for discernment. And he's probably between 12 and 20 years old, pretty young. He asked God for wisdom instead of the big things that people hunt for and search for. He asked God for wisdom. Interesting, right? No one really puts wisdom as the highest thing to attain. It's always just a useful thing. Okay, so there's a story here about Solomon that demonstrates his great wisdom. So this is actually in 1 Kings. It follows what I just read, and it demonstrates his wisdom. So get ready for this. If you haven't already grabbed yourself a tea or a coffee or something, pause the video, do that now. We'll get into some really good stuff here. Okay, so it goes on. Now 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. One of them said, "My lord, this woman and I live in the same house. I had a baby while she was there with me, the 3rd day after my child was born. This woman also had a baby. We were alone, and there was no one in the house but the 2 of us." Whoops. "During the night, this woman's son died because she lay on him. So she got up in the middle of the night and took my son from my side while I, your servant, was asleep. She put him by her breast, and I put her dead son by my breast. The next morning, I got up to nurse my son, and he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning light, I saw that it wasn't the son I had born. The other woman said, 'No, the living one is my son, and the dead one is yours.' But the first one insisted, 'No, the dead one is yours, the living one is mine.' And so they argued before the king. The king said, 'This one says, my son is alive and your son is dead. Well, that one says, no, your son is dead and mine is alive.' Then the king said, 'Bring me a sword.' So they brought a sword for the king, and he gave an order. 'Cut the living child in 2 and give half to one and half to the other.' The woman whose son was alive was filled with compassion for her son and said to the king, 'Please, my lord, give her the living baby, don't kill him.' But the other said, 'Neither I nor you shall have him. Cut him in 2. Then the king gave this ruling: 'Give the living baby to the first woman. Do not kill him. She is his mother.' When all Israel heard the verdict the king had given, they held the king in awe because they saw that he had wisdom from God to administer justice." Interesting story, right? Solomon takes this scenario to the extreme. He sets up a scenario where he brings out the truth by perceiving emotion. He says, well, let's split the baby, right? And that brings out the true emotion from each of the women. The woman who lost her child says that's fine. And the woman whose child was still alive gets extremely emotional and says, no, at very least, let this other woman keep the child in order to save its life. So that demonstrates an example of Solomon's great wisdom. There are many other cases in the Bible that you can study that demonstrate his great wisdom. He got super rich, so he stacked up a ton of gold, probably had like half of the known gold supply in the world, tons of silver, tons of other riches as well, which all stemmed from his choice to choose discernment over riches, and then God saying, not only will I give you wisdom, but I'll also add to that riches, and if you obey my statutes, a long life as well. Okay, so that is the example of Solomon's wisdom. Now let's get into some proverbs that demonstrate some really good principles. So Solomon wrote most of the proverbs, and if you haven't read proverbs before, you should check them out. They will offer you more wisdom and insight than almost anything else you're going to find You know, not many YouTubers will talk about the Proverbs, but they will offer you more guidance and insight than almost anything else you'll ever find on this planet. So Proverbs 3, let's get into that one. It says, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep your commands in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth and the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, as a father the son he delights in." Got a nice bay coming up here. Nice scenery. "Blessed is the man who finds wisdom, the man who gains understanding, for she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold." So Solomon, who had all the gold and all the silver, says it's not really about that. It's actually about wisdom. You're not going to hear that from current YouTubers. You're not going to hear that from most people. They're going to be preaching, you know, different things to you. It goes on. That's Proverbs 3. Check it out. Let's move into another proverb. Let's head over to Proverbs 22. It says, "A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold." So once again, Solomon's saying, you know, money is not the greatest attainment. "Rich and poor have this in common: the Lord is maker of them all. A prudent man sees danger and takes refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it. Humility and fear of the Lord bring wealth and honor and life. In the paths of the wicked lie thorns and snares, but he who guards his soul stays far from them." Pay attention and listen to the sayings of the wise. Apply your heart to what I teach. Do you see a man skilled in his work? He will serve before kings. He will not serve before obscure men. That's some of Proverbs 22. That's a great one. Let's head to Proverbs 31, and then we'll do Ecclesiastes as our final sort of proof of Solomon's wisdom. So Proverbs 31, because we have a nice boat in the background. Let's check that out. Proverbs 31, the sayings of King Lemuel, an oracle his mother taught him. "O my son, O son of my womb, O son of my vows, do not spend your strength on women, your vigor on those who ruin kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, not for kings to drink wine, not for rulers to crave beer, lest they drink and forget what the law decrees. Give beer to those who are perishing, wine to those who are in anguish. Let them drink and forget their poverty. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. For the rights of all who are destitute, speak up and judge fairly. defend the rights of the poor and needy. And then Proverbs finishes talking about finding a good wife. It says, a wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good and not harm all the days of her life. Give her the reward she has earned, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. So, that is a taste of the Proverbs. I've grown up my entire life with the Proverbs. You guys may or may not be familiar with them, but you'll want to check them out because most of the Proverbs were written by the wisest man to ever walk the earth, Solomon. And you're going to find a lot of wisdom there. Maybe 100 times or 1,000 times more wisdom than you'll find in most any other book. But my favorite book by Solomon was not the Proverbs, it was Ecclesiastes, which follows Proverbs. And let's get into Ecclesiastes. This is a book that's a little bit darker, a little bit different from Proverbs. It's kind of a summary book about Solomon's life. And he's kind of recapping and saying, here's what I did, here's what worked and what didn't work, and here's what really matters. And this is where we finally get into our 2 keys for winning in life. All of this background is finally about to be concluded and brought together in Ecclesiastes. So let's check out Ecclesiastes 1 and 2. You can easily search Ecclesiastes 1 and 2 to bring it up and follow along. And as you read, you'll find some things that are really interesting. So Ecclesiastes 1, this is Solomon again. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What does man gain from all his labor, at which he toils under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. So we're seeing a lot of cycles that he's referring to. The cycles of the seasons, cycles of the day, cycles of water. What has been done, what has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already, long ago. It was here before our time. There is no remembrance of men of old. And even those who are yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow. I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I devoted myself to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on men. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is twisted cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I thought to myself, look, I have grown and increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. So he's saying, look guys, I became very wise and I applied myself probably more than almost anyone ever has. And I found that not only will most people never be remembered, will the cycles continue, will everything that's been done continue to be done, but even the pursuit of wisdom has only so much value. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure and find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is foolish. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I brought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired men and women singers and a harem as well, the delights of the heart of man. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work, and this was the reward for all my labor. Yet when I surveyed all my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Pretty crazy, right? He is surveying all that he's done. He's saying everything is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. When I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom and also madness and folly, what more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise man has eyes in his head, while the fool walks in the darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. When I thought in my heart, the fate of the fool will overtake me also, what then do I gain by being wise? I said in my heart, this too is meaningless, for the wise man, like the fool, will not be long remembered. In days to come, both will be forgotten. Like the fool, the wise man too must die. So I hated life, because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool. Yet he will have control over all the work into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over my toilsome labor under the sun. For a man may do his work with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then he must leave all he owns to someone who has not worked for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What does a man get for all the toil and anxious striving with which he labors under the sun? All his days, his work is pain and grief. Even at night, his mind does not rest. This too is meaningless. And here's the verse, verse 24. So Ecclesiastes 2:24. This is the verse that ties everything Solomon has learned over the past maybe 70, 80 years of being king, of being the wisest man to ever walk the earth. This is the verse that ties it all together and that brings out the two keys to winning in life. He says, a man can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work. Again, a man can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work. This too I see is from the hand of God. For without him, to the man who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So there we go. There is the crux of Solomon's wisdom. Right there. That is 1 Kings, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes. So now we've done it. We've unlocked what winning and success is in life from Solomon himself. We have unlocked the keys. What are they? Key one is understanding what winning is and what it's not. You know, crossing off fame, crossing off riches, crossing off everything that winning is not, understanding what winning is. Once you understand that, which could take you decades, but hopefully once you've seen this video and have studied Proverbs, have studied Ecclesiastes, and have studied Kings, Chronicles, the Samuels, may only take you a few months. Once you've understood that, then the key two is to work, play, and be satisfied. So basically work hard, play hard, be content. That's how you win. That's literally how you win. So are you guys surprised? Are you shocked? Are you disappointed? Well, it's all here. Solomon, the wisest man to ever walk the earth, he's already answered the question for you. If you thought winning was Lambos and women, well, he already tried that. He had about 900 concubines who were essentially women who just stood around and gave pleasure to the king. He tried women, he tried riches. He had about half the riches in the world. He tried everything you could think of. As he said, he tried building things. He tried building great fountains. He tried building vineyards, having really cool wine. Tried pretty much everything that you can imagine. He already tried that. So Solomon has already walked down the path of complete experimentation. So he's already done that. If you thought Lambos were the answer, Solomon's already answered that. If you thought women were the answer, Solomon has already answered that. It's already been answered 3,000 years ago, and most people don't know about it. So, the two keys to life. Again, are understanding what winning is and what it's not. And number two, working hard, playing hard, and essentially being satisfied in the work of your hands.
So Solomon said at the end of the day, you really want to do your best and then actually be content, because you can spend your whole life being anxious and not being satisfied in what you've done. It really gets down to that, guys. Just enjoying the fruit of your labor and understanding what winning in life truly is. Now, of course, there is more. There is much more to everything we've been talking about. There's also beginning to understand who God is, the author of the universe. And that's part of winning as well. But these two keys should get you a long way to your journey of winning. Let's see, anything else here that we have for you? So to recap, Proverbs 3 talked about trusting in the Lord. Do you trust in the Lord? Do you trust in a higher power? Like I said, I've listened to the podcasts, I have studied evolution, I've studied all of the current theories. At the end of the day, they all break down, they all collapse, they all have unknowns that no expert in the world across the 7 or 8 billion people that we have has answers to. They all break down. No one knows the origin of the world. No one knows the origin of dark matter or why it works or how it works. No one even knows how gravity works or really why it works. No one knows why the speed of light is constant and so useful and so interesting. The experts just don't know. Proverbs 3 says, find wisdom. Do you seek wisdom like gold? It says, preserve sound judgment. The wise will inherit honor. Proverbs 22, a good name is better than riches. Foresee danger, take refuge. So, always be looking for danger, like in chess, watching out for traps. Listen to the wise. Who are you listening to? Are you listening to the wise or just, YouTubers trying to get you rich? It says, be skilled in your work. So even if you're at a 9-to-5 job right now, be skilled in it. Proverbs 31, don't get drunk. A lot of people are smoking weed. They're trying to live day by day. They think, hey, not a big deal. But they don't realize when you do smoke pot and things like that, it completely changes your mentality and you don't go into attack mode. So instead of being really dissatisfied with where you're at in life and attacking life and starting a YouTube channel, being entrepreneurial, trying new things, instead of that you're doing weed, watching your favorite show, and you think, hey, not a big deal. But that's actually a huge swing in the opposite direction that can cause you to stagnate. So be of a sober mind. Proverbs 31 also talks about defending the poor and needy. So do you defend the poor and needy? It talks about finding a good spouse. That's really rare to find a really good spouse, a noble wife, as it's talked about. The divorce rate right now in America is super high. It's in the 50%. A lot of folks are not able to find a good spouse. So a lot of folks probably have not read Proverbs. They haven't put this wisdom to use. And then finally, Ecclesiastes, to recap, Solomon says, generations die, God remains. Nothing is new under the sun. So nothing's new. If we thought evolution brought all the answers, we just have to go a few layers deeper to see that it's a house of cards, to see that we've spent 150 years trying to build upon Charles Darwin's thoughts and his deepest conclusions on evolution and how it came from. And even Darwin himself had serious doubts about evolution. But we've spent 150 years stockpiling biased information, trying to make evolution work, trying to find life on other planets, and coming up with zeros over and over and over. We've got thousands of planets now that none of them appear to have life. Maybe in 20 years we'll understand that no other planets do have life. It's very unlikely. Maybe in 20 years we'll realize that the Earth is extremely unique and set apart and created by God. Maybe it'll take 50 years to understand that. But evolution is a house of cards that will fall. Even Darwin understood how tenuous it was. So nothing is new under the sun. Evolution, nope, just another theory. Anything else we think we've figured out, really not anything new. Don't just chase wisdom. So don't make wisdom your God. Learn from Solomon, put his words to use, and then live your life. Everyone is mortal, so you can't keep your riches. Eventually, everything you've stored up and stockpiled will get passed on to the next person, and he might be a complete fool. Or he might be your family. And then finally, eat, drink, find satisfaction in your work. So again, guys, it all comes down to two things. Two things to win in life. You may never hear this sort of instruction, this sort of wisdom all tied together in the way that I've been able to today. You may never hear it again. This may be the only video that ties together all of these different components in life and gives you an answer to how to win in life. And it's not really so much about me. I've just tied these things together, and I'm just harnessing the words of the wisest man to walk the earth. It comes down to two things, the two keys to winning in life. Again, what are they? Comment below. They are understanding what winning is, and working hard and playing hard and finding contentment in what you do. After that, you should of course dig deeper. You should of course try to get to know the one who created this ocean, the one who created that sky, the one who created the billions of stars that surround us, that we have no answers for, that we are in awe of, and that all of our experts simply cannot explain. You should get to know the creator of all things after you apply these two keys to your life. So that's it, guys. Hopefully you've had some good tea, some good coffee. Watch this video again whenever you're confused about life. It actually has most of the sort of Boy Scout survival answers that you'll need for your life to get started whenever you're confused, whenever you're not sure about where to go and what to do next in life. All right, guys, until next time, take care.